Well, hey YouTube, it's Petey Two-Finger, and I present you the battery amp project that I have been working on. Finished it tonight, and I'm happy with it. This was an up and down thing. There was I don't want to dwell on my shortcomings. I ordered some stuff that I didn't really read. Like I assumed, like, oh, that's a JFET based circuit, and it came and I built it and it was not JFET, and it sucked a real lot of power, which is not good for battery amp. So I'm going to just leave it at that and say that I had made a few videos earlier and I was just dejected. At this point I'm super happy about the amp, and it's going to work out great. My apologies for speaking a little too soon. So here's what we got going on. It's a cache box, and it's got a fuse and an plastic output jack. Did I fuse it up? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got a 6 amp slow blow fuse. I found if I ran 2 or 3 amp fuses with these amp boards, they would blow. So I try to run 5 or 6. It seems awfully high to me, but I digress. So the input for the amp is here. Here's the power switch. It's got this ridiculous safety thing, but that will protect it from getting turned on in transport. The only thing that's missing is an LED or indicator. Now I have a 10mm red LED that I was going to use. I also saw that Tata sells these indicators, and they look neat. So I have a 16mm 12 volt yellow and a 22mm yellow 24 volt one coming, and when those arrive I will look at this and realize the 16mm is too big for this area and install the 10mm red LED. So what we have is the input here. This is a metal or grounded jack. The rear jack is an old plastic jack that I took out of a Digitech delay years ago, and I've had it for the longest time. This jack does not ground at all. The plastic chassis is completely isolated from the ground tab, which these Class D amp boards don't like to be grounded on the output. So it comes in here. Here is a volume control. This knob doesn't match the others. It's the same kind of style, but it was a gold one, and I sanded the gold off and drew a line with a Sharpie on it. I've got a regular silver one coming. This is a volume knob for the input first stage, which is a Fetzer valve, which is a very simple biased JFET circuit. J201, which is supposed to emulate the first stage of an old Fender tube amp. There is actually coming in off of this jack, there is a buffer, then the Fetzer valve, and then it goes to this switch, which gives you 2 options. One option down is through this circuit. The other option up is through these 2 circuits. And then on the other side of that switch, it goes to the power amp. So it's clean and dirty. That's how that works. This here is gain, and this here is volume for the input stage. Or actually, I think this is the gain. Yeah. And this here's the volume. And that's called a Le Louis, which is a single transistor that has a bunch of different clipping diode options and like this goofy override. It's a switch that when you click it, it defeats the potentiometer, so it runs at full throttle. And that's like their boost button. So this is a boutique pedal, but people were like, oh my god. Back around Y2K, they were like, this Le Louis, it just sounds so great. It turns any crappy amp into a tweed because it has that type of distortion. But this is just the clean channel here. Over here we have a noise gate. This is a DOD 230. This uses a Vactrol, which is a CDSL and an LDR combined. And you can make your own, but I didn't. I ordered the actual Vactrol because it was 2 for $3 with $3 shipping. But yeah, it was a pretty good deal. It's $3 for the Vactrol, which I think is fair. And to know that this entire circuit hangs on one component like the attack and the release is all down to this Vactril. Thought, well, I might want to get that part rather than wing it and then be like, oh man, I wish the release was a little longer. So it's worth it to me. Again, I'm not the type of DIY guy who is going to save money with the expense of time tinkering. I will pay to have it work right, because like I'd rather buy a PCB, and that's just because the thrill is gone with this hobby, and I suffer back pain when I'm hunching over working with the soldering iron. Oh man, I get short. So yeah, clean to the lay Louis. Dirty, you still got the buffer and the Fetzer valve. Goes through the .230 noise gate. And then lastly is a JHS Angry Charlie version 3. So this is bass, mid-range, treble, and boy, that treble knob really does a lot. The bass not so much, and not so much the treble. Volume and gain, or gain, let's see. I'm looking at this funny. I think this is volume and this is gain. So should we take a look on the inside? Feast for the eyes. There's the lay Louis, or there's the Angry Charlie. Here's the noise gate. There's the main switching, it's for channel switching, and here is the lay Louis. Over here, oh, I'll do what they all do. Let me pretend I'm Brett, the Guitologizer. Here is a 7809 voltage regulator. So this provides a 9-volt rail which runs up here, which gives 9 volts for all of this stuff. This is 9 volts, this is 9 volts, this circuit is 9 volts, this circuit is 9 volts. You got to tap a lot with your chopstick to be a real pro. And this circuit here, that's 9 volts. So yeah, we'll start with the powering. This here equals 24 volts, okay? And then this here equals 24 volts. So these are connected. It's like 12 volts and 12 volts connected. 12 volts and 12 volts connected. Okay, so there's two 24 volt powers, and those are connected to each other to make it last twice as long. And then that wire runs up to here, which is our switch to turn it on. And that's a double-sided switch, it's a DP-DT. This here lone battery pack is 12.5 volts, and that's this yellow and green wire running up here. That runs to the other side of the switch. So one side of the switch sends 24 volts back here to our power amp, which I didn't really show you that yet. There's the power amp. That's a TPA 3116D2 mono 100 watt power amp, class D power amp board. Now I realize, yeah, I'm only getting 1/3 of a watt out of it, or whatever your calculations come up to. It's probably like 30, 60, I'm not sure. But yeah, with 24 volts and 8 ohms, who knows? So this has a little heat. It doesn't really get hot, but it does have a heat sink here. So yeah, here's the input, here's the power input, and there's the output. So the output just goes right over to the the fuse and the power jack are buddies, and it's kind of tight. So this whole thing, this is a piece of wood that I cut off of a piece of furniture over at the industrial park. It was a nice old, looked like it was made in the 50s. So this is some nice wood. I cut this piece out and then ripped some screws in from the bottom to hold it. And then that enabled me to tie in, to screw these guys in here, just sloppily screw the battery trays in. And they sell these at Tata for 60 cents. So this front piece here is off a cigar box. This is thick, and that enabled me to cut this piece of strip board 2 wide, positive and negative with the 9 volt, and just tie in. And you can see I got sloppy with the soldering iron. Probably should repair that. So power 24 volts comes up to the switch and goes back to the power amp, and then the 12 volt comes over to the 7809 VRAG, which feeds, this here is the Fetzer valve, and that has a adjuster for biasing. You set that for 4.5 volts off the drain. And then here's the buffer circuit, that's the Klon buffer. And then here is our, well, this control here goes back to the Fetzer valve. So this is the pot for the first stage coming at main input. Like if you're going to run clean, you want to turn this down. If you're going to want to push this Lei Louis, you can turn that up and it will really help to light up these LEDs that are the clipping diodes. Stock, it calls for 1N40, 148 and BAT42, BAT46 on an additional switch. I did not use the 1N40, 148 because it's way too compressed and dirty for a clean channel. I used LEDs, and I probably should have just used, I don't know, one LED or an LED that had a higher clipping voltage would have been better, give me more clean tone. But I mean, when you turn the gain all the way down, you can always bump your guitar volume down a little bit and get more clean, you know. The power amp board had a 10K potentiometer that throttles the volume on that. So I snip that out and then I leave little stubs, and then I use some computer IDE cable and soldered in 3 wires on that and ran that up to this pot. So that's the master volume. This is like controlling the input volume to the power amp, and that sits on the side just because I didn't have room in the front. Is that everything? Yeah, here's the volume input check. I guess I could talk a little bit about why I was frustrated was, oh God, there was so much monkey business with this amp. I don't want to say it was worse than the last year's build. Last year I built an amp just like this with a Marshall PAL 800, which is a JFET Marshall preamp. It's like a pedal, you know, Marshall in a box. And it really, that one really sounds good. This one has way more gain. The clean sound on this is really good. And at first the distortion was so dark, like there was no treble. And looking at the circuit on the final stage of the JHS Angry Charlie, it's an op amp stage. So we have the output of the op amp going, and there is there's a resistor here, and then there's a capacitor here going to ground, and then it goes to the output basically. There's actually a pot here, but for our sake, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, here is an R and here is a C. That's an RC network. This is a filter. So he put this in here to reduce high end, so it wouldn't be a fizzy distortion. And I'm thinking this doesn't have enough high end. So what I ended up doing, there was a 6.8K and this C was 22 NF. So what I did, I unsoldered the 6.8K resistor that was here and the 22 nanofarad capacitor. This was R19 and C17, okay? And I installed sockets. And in the sockets you can just pop a part in and pop it out if you don't like it. And what we did, we put in a 2.2K resistor here as opposed to the 6.8K, and then a 2.2 nanofarad as opposed to a 22 nanofarad. And that opened the Angry Charlie up enough on the high side. It gave me that treble back that I was missing. So the Angry Charlie, I bought the PCB from Pedal PCB, and the treble knob, like if I run an oscillator through it and turn the treble knob, I can hear it doing something, but it's like it's a joke. This treble knob doesn't fucking do anything. And so many of these DIY circuits that I build are like that. They give you this knob and it's like, it's got a 3-band EQ. Does it? But that fucking treble knob doesn't do anything. Barely. And I would, if you see, you know, for number one, I don't want to pay for a pot if I'm never going to fucking touch it. You know what I mean? So doing things this way of looking online and like just, oh, I'm going to try this and to put into an amp is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to build the pedal first and see if you like it. And then if you like it, You go, oh, you know what? I bet this would sound really good in front of a Class D amp. Well, I've already got the pedal, so yeah, I can try it. You know, so really doing this, the lesson that I learned is you can't watch demos. I mean, one of the demos I saw, the guy turned the gain way down in the Angry Charlie and the amp was still really dirty. Well, that's because he had gain up on his amp. His amp was already dirty. And a lot of these guys, man, I'll tell you what, if you watch that Ola, the Swedish metal guy, does a chug, Ola, all of his stuff sounds the same because he's running it through these high gain amps. Like let's see if it chugs through your an amp that's already, you know, this what gent sound on the amp. Anything in front of it is gonna make it sound like a heavy metal sound because your amp is cranked. It's like, anyway, this was not fun building this. I might do a demo for you guys in the apartment, like if I get lucky and there's nobody here and it's early, like, hey, Gopti, let's do a quick demo. But the main demos for this is going to be when we're playing live at the quarry, when we do these remote music days. This is what I'm going to be using for my center on my wet dry wet rig. So that's where you guys are really going to get to hear it. But I watch Clementine, Heavy Metal ATC. If you guys haven't subscribed to his channel, you should. He built a gold foil pickup. And I watched his demo, and I was just so jealous of, he did an extended where he's playing the guitar, and it just sounded so good. And he's a good guitar player too, you know. It's like, it's interesting enough watching him just sit there and play. And it sounded really great, and I was like, man, I wish I could do that. So maybe I will do a little demo for you guys, but I wanted to give him a shout out and turn some of you guys, if you like what I do, you'll love this guy. It's the same type of thing. It's not spending a real lot of money, and in his case, he's really talented at it, and he's able to like build really cool stuff. Not like me. And he doesn't complain like I do. He's not on here always moaning and getting angry. Anyway, you guys, I'm glad this one is done, and I look forward to playing through it. We got 3 brand new songs. There's going to be more songs coming. The mayor of saturated polyfats is coming here to stay for a little while, my grandson. So, yeah, I'll see you, but probably not so soon. Take care of yourselves, and thanks. Peace.